Oh, it was absolutely a housekeeping problem. It was also a serious provisioning problem.
Right, right.
You know, without refrigeration and other things, you had to bring in whatever you were going to be eating and stuff from the neighborhood, and it was sort of like an army.
Right, it
would
was like
come
an
in,
army,
yeah,
exactly.
and could only live off the land,
Right,
so
for
to
so
speak,
long,
for a
right.
fairly short time, and had to move on. And then, of course, if you were an unfortunate host, some of those lords and ladies currying favor with the king would bankrupt themselves,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
trying to entertain.
Absolutely, and in fact, that's why it's interesting to me that the castles were usually, well, they were on the river initially for military purposes, but in the case of Hampton Court, didn't need to be, but they needed to be near the river for the fish. And then one thing that became very dangerous in the castles was baking the bread, so that the bakehouse, in the case of Hampton Court, is separate, and it's down by the water, because the way that they would make the bread, it would be in a beehive-style oven that was huge.
Right.
And so they would make the bread and the dough and so on, build a big fire inside the bakehouse with just the one small chimney, open the door when it was just ashes, and shove the bread inside. But what would frequently happen is that the bakehouse would just blow up and take out several of the workers with it.
Really?
Yeah, it's terrible. And so that's why it had to be moved down to the river, so that if there was an explosion, they could quickly put it out, because the main thing that destroyed these castles was fire.
Right.
And so that it became so dangerous to do that, to bake the bread, that they moved it away from the castle and down by water, so that they could extinguish the fire if it got out of control with an explosion.
I have a dirty little secret hobby here, which
Uh-oh.
is I go and collect British stately homes.
Oh,
I once spent 4 months in England and got to 102.
oh my.
And subsequently, I think my count's up to 140 or so forth. And it's always fascinating to me to go and visit, because they keep different things. And some they have preserved the kitchen. There's a wonderful one in Yorkshire who said to me apologetically when I got there, I'm sorry, they said, we don't have a kitchen, but we have a laundry. I can't tell you how fascinating the laundry
I'll
was.
bet.
I mean, it was a remarkable institution. I mean, you're talking, you know, at least 200 people.
Sure.
Often more. And, you know, the whole paraphernalia for washing, for ironing, all those little starchy things. You know, there were little goffering irons, a little this and little that. But it is truly fascinating to go through medieval. If you go to Bath, you can go to number 1. I'm trying to remember. I think it's the...
On the Crescent?
Yeah, thank you. Couldn't remember it, which is the National Trust.
Sure.
And that's where you can see, if I remember right, the little dog spit as opposed to the child spit. You know, they had to turn, in order to roast the meat in the open fireplaces with those spits. They had children who walked them around in medieval kitchens, but they refined it down. In Regency times, they often had a dog spit.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Which presumably was slightly more humane, at least to children, et cetera. But you can, you know, admire the ingenuity, and then you go here and you go somewhere like Monticello, and you see the kinds of things that Jefferson worked out with these dumbwaiter.
Right. No, I know, I love Monticello. It's very ingenious. That's very ingenious.
But all of them have this feature in common, with the possible exception of Bath, is that the kitchen facility, because of the fire danger, is away. You know, if you go to Mount Vernon or you go to Monticello, the actual food preparation is not right
within the great house.
And I'm sure that it was fire, but I'm sure it was also heat control, it was smell.
Sure.
A lot of things. But the sad part, I've always thought, is that so many of the people who were served by enormous staffs, enormous kitchens in these great places, never had a hot meal.
Oh, I know. And plus what they drank, because see, they didn't drink water because they was considered unsafe and you shouldn't drink water. So even the kids all drank ale. They all drank ale, even if it was very much weakened. So actually the kids turning the spit at Hampton Court, they have a little place where they put their jugs of ale to drink during the day. So you think of all this whole generation of alcoholics working in the kitchen. It's depressing.
Well, maybe it was kind, though. If you were going to be walking a spit around all day in a hot place, maybe you just as soon be drunk. What a horrible thought. Well, you know what? We've somewhat digressed from the... Maybe everybody's wondering, why are we talking about all this British food with sticks and scones? So maybe we should explain that the reason is...
Well, the reason is that... Actually, what got this book started was that when I was working on Tough Cookie, which was the previous book, our son was playing basketball down in Denver. My husband was always with him. And I... would go to see Shakespeare in Love night after night after night after night. Shakespeare in Love, Shakespeare in Love. I saw it, I think I lost count at 14 times in the theater. And so my editor told me I wanted an Elizabethan feast to the next book. And so for me to do an Elizabethan feast, then I had to have a place for it, which became the castle where Goldie is catering in Sticks and Scones. And so that's what got me started. Plus I have these people who are threatening her. And so she's in the castle.
Well, wait,
Right.
where is the castle? That's
The castle,
the part we're missing.
okay. Well, in Colorado, actually, as you well know, in many parts of America, wealthy Americans, wealthy eccentric Americans brought European buildings over and had them reconstructed here.
Yes, we have London
Bridge, right? And of course the cloisters in New York City, which is very beautiful. And in Colorado we have St. Malo, which is an abbey that was brought from Switzerland. And then we do have some castles that are not as well known, or manor houses that were brought to Colorado. And usually they were brought by people who wanted to create a new layer of nobility, or a new nobility in the United States, just by bringing the accoutrement over, the building.
Was this some of the real wealthy, like the Silver Kings?
Well, yes, like the Silver Barons are also, even in Newport, Rhode Island. I don't know if you've ever visited there.
been
But
to
okay, well,
Newport,
they're like castles, and that was the whole idea of it, was to have castles there.
Right.
But-
I've been to San Simeon, which
Okay,
is certainly
right.
Hearst version,
Right.
much, and also the Biltmore House in Asheville, North
Right.
Carolina, but that one was not brought over.
No, but it's the same idea.
It is.
It's the same
Exactly.
idea. So that's where it's coming from, is that this castle was brought to Aspen Meadow, Colorado, which is where Goldie the Caterer works, and had a moat around it and so on and so forth during the silver boom. And then once the silver boom was over, it sort of fell into disrepair and so on. And so now the new owner has just made a huge amount of money. And this is something I learned when I was over there, is that the guard robes, which is basically the toilets, in order to take the smell away, you talk about, you know, the dogs and so on, but in order to take the smell away, they would throw down the shafts of the guard robes flowers, herbs, and old letters. And so when this very Swiss woman who is married to the new owner of the castle has all the guard robes disinfected, they find this letter from Henry VIII. And that's what provides all this money to refurbish the castle and bring in Goldie the Caterer.
Right.
So
In fact, they take the letter to auction and
That's
get,
right.
what, $20 million
that's
for
a
it?
huge amount of money, right?
Well, you could just make it up, because who could contest
Well,
it?
that's what I did. Was I used an auction agent.
Oh, you
in this.
did?
I did, because he was so helpful, and he was very helpful because I have this theft of stamps, and so he helped me with all the current values of the stamps. And then with the Henry VIII letter, you know, if it were authenticated. And then I had a medievalist at the University of Colorado was helping me with that too, because I wanted to have it be at least partly, you know, verifiable for today's prices. So.
Well, good for you. I
Yeah.
thought it was just a figure you plucked from the air. I'm
No.
sorry, I've done you an
No.
injustice
No,
there.
no,
I
not
didn't
at
even
all.
think about that.
Not at all, because he said it would just be incalculable, so it would depend on economic conditions at the time that
Sure.
something like that would be auctioned. But he said 10 million pounds would be about in the.
And you'd have to find somebody that wanted it.
That's
I mean,
right.
You know, it's only worth in the end what somebody will
That's
actually
right.
pay you for it.
That's right. So, and I had a lot of fun researching the British meals and then the Elizabethan feast, which actually, as I say, Americans wouldn't eat. And so this owner of the castle says, well, can we make it? And you know how much, I mean, look at you, you love English style things.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many Americans do. And so what Goldie has to convince him is, well, let's make it Anglophile types. Let's make what would have been served under certain circumstances. And so that's what she's playing with. That's her point of departure when there are dark doings in the castle. And, she has to go
Someone
investigate.
dies.
Yeah, that's right.
And there she is.
That's right.
I thought it was actually very plausible. Of course, having, you know, been to the cloisters, been
Sure.
to San Simeon, been
There
to
you
the
go.
Biltmore, and knowing about our local Lake
Right.
Havasu thing, I thought it was actually a very clever but entirely
Thanks.
believable idea.
Thanks.
Guard robes, too, are interesting in that, for those who don't know the construction, they were built into the castle walls,
That's
and
right.
there was a very long drop
That's right.
between where the seat was,
That's
and
right.
oftentimes they were built on a bluff or over a river.
Right.
So there was a very long, I suppose it was, well, gravity was doing its work, but also the ventilation, you
That's
know,
right.
was because of the
Right.
length of the shaft.
Well, and it's interesting because what I had to find out, what you always have to find out when you're a mystery writer, is what are the ways in and out of this place?
Right.
Like with Tough Cookie, for example, when I was doing the ski resort, how do you get in and out of at night? How do you get in and out of this place? Which was fascinating because it's through the garbage.